freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 292 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is No Better Government, and our guest is Erich Pratt. Erich is a senior vice president for Gun Owners of America, which is a national grassroots organization representing more than 2 million Americans dedicated to promoting their Second Amendment freedom to keep and bear arms. Pratt is also the author of a civil government textbook, The Constitutional Recipe for Freedom, written to teach civil government to high school students.
Fantastic. Welcome back to the show, Erich. How are you?
Oh, doing great. It's so good to be back with you guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Kind of a busy season, isn't it, Erich?
A little bit.
Very much so.
Yeah, our Second Amendment rights are clearly under assault. I don't think there's any way we can pretty that up or make that any nicer sounding than what it really is.
Probably our whole Constitution.
I wouldn't doubt that. And we are in an all hands on deck DEFCON situation. And I wonder, do you think, president of the GOA, vice president of the GOA, did I overstate that? Is there a way to overstate the assault that our Second Amendment rights are under?
Well, no, you're not overstating it. I mean, there's talk of executive orders. Congress is changing the rules to bring gun control to the floor. In fact, 2 bills are coming to the floor of the House, and they're going to try to send that over to the Senate as quickly as they can. One of the bills, H.R. 8, would make it a crime for a person just to transfer a gun to someone else. And, it gives a few exceptions, but there's a lot of problems with this bill. The biggest is the threat of registration, because every transfer of a gun would have to go through government screening if this bill passes. But at its core, H.R. 8 would make it a crime just to hand a gun to somebody if you don't go through the proper government screening. And of course, they graciously, air quotes there, give us some limited exceptions, but really they're all traps. I mean, for example, the bill says that, graciously would allow you to give your gun, a gun to your daughter, but not to her husband. And you could also gift a gun to your son, but you better not do it in exchange for his doing work around the house or in the yard or anything like that. So, you've got these few exceptions in the bill, but here's the problem. The left, today's exceptions are always tomorrow's loopholes. I mean, can't you just hear the left saying, oh, sure, you can't give a gun to your son-in-law, but you can give a gun to your daughter who's married to him. That's the son-in-law loophole. I mean, you can already start writing their script for them. I mean, this is how the left advances gun control piecemeal. Whatever is allowable freedom today, they call it a loophole. But again, the biggest problem with H.R. 8, and this is the thing that the left has been after for a long time, is registration. Even the Obama administration admitted in 2013 that the only way to make universal background checks effective is to have universal registration, because that's what they're after. And that way they can enforce any future gun bans. So that's clearly probably the most pernicious bill that we're going to be seeing coming down the pike.
Man, there's so much there. Mm-hmm. There's just so much. I mean, I can't believe, we know that that's what they want. It's the registration.
Mhm.
Yes.
They've been trying that since
But is
1968.
registration ever the end goal of things? I mean, if we look historically,
That's a start.
that's it. That's right.
That's right.
Registration is just a tool that they use later when they want confiscation.
Yeah, we've seen that in other countries. We've even seen that in this country, where registration, like New York City is a classic example. They began registering long guns in the 1960s. They promised at the time that it would never be used for confiscation. But then, under Mayor David Dinkins, when they banned many of those guns that were previously registered, and they said, well, we never made those promises. Because it was, a generation earlier that had made the promises, and so they banned certain commonly owned firearms. And the New York City papers wrote about it, how police were sent to people's doors who weren't complying with the ban. Police went to their doors to confiscate firearms. So yeah, it's never the end goal. It's always a stepping stone to what they want to get to. So yeah, that's a huge problem with HR 8. Of course, there's another bill that Pelosi is rushing through, and that's HR 1446. And this one would really just create indefinite delays for when, now that they're forcing everything to go through a background check. 1446 would make it so that, hearing back from the FBI could be indefinitely delayed. We hear already from GOA members about how their background checks to buy a gun are being delayed well beyond the 3-day limit that currently exists in law. And what we've seen over and over again, the FBI has no problem issuing delays on gun purchases, and they do it without any particular grounds for doing so. I mean, they can just ignore the law because, let's face it, for us to contest a delay is really expensive. It's time consuming and complicated, and it might not get resolved for years. And so, it's interesting in justifying these delays. The left talks about the Charleston loophole. That's in regard to a killer at a South Carolina church a few years back. The FBI didn't find his drug arrest within the 3 days when he bought the gun. So the left wants to extend that 3-day period much, much longer. And it's interesting. Senator Tom Cotton just recently asked Biden's Attorney General nominee, does the Department of Justice have the authority to deny gun sales indefinitely? And guess what? He said he didn't know. I mean, here's the guy who's going to be the head of the Justice Department, and he doesn't know if it's okay or not to indefinitely delay these background checks. I mean, that's really scary. And that's how they're going to make this Charleston loophole so big. I mean, you could drive a truck through it. I tell you what, the real Charleston loophole is the fact that Americans are prohibited from carrying guns in certain places. I mean, we actually see that at that South Carolina church shooting. The killer was originally going to target a local college, but then he saw there was a lot of armed security there. So he decided not to shoot up the college. Instead, he sought out a gun-free zone. He chose a church to shoot up. See, that's the real Charleston loophole that the left doesn't want to talk about. That's really the Charleston loophole that we need to close, because over 90% of mass shootings in this country, guess what? They occur in these gun-free zones. Gun-free zones are deadly, and that's really what Congress should be addressing.
Boy, I couldn't have said that any better. And it was interesting when you were talking about this latest nominee that wants to use that I don't know platform. The last time that it hit me the same way as it did just now when you said it was back when Director of the FBI, James Comey, was being questioned about online sales. And the question was, so how does this work when somebody purchases a gun online? And he said, I don't know. And we are gun store owners, and we are held to the letter of the law that's going to eventually be enforced by federal, right,
Yep.
laws as it works its way up the chain. And we were just aghast. And at that time, it was before so much about, whatever you believe about the FBI as an organization or the people that work on the ground. Before we knew anything that made us, kind of tilt our head like what's going on here? and I defended him at the time. I said, well, he's got a lot of things he's got to know. Maybe he just doesn't know about this one particular piece. But now I see that I don't know platform is just a way that nothing can stick to them later, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. I think tyrants love that excuse. I mean, before the FBI director, of course, there was Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing, right? I mean, that's just classic.
Eric, when are they going to realize, Congress going to realize that they can make all the laws they want, but the criminals are still going to break them? The criminals, what they're doing is they're making honest citizens go through all these loopholes to stop criminals that they keep releasing out of jail and keep giving them a second pass. We need, that's where it needs to be addressed.
It's so backward. You're absolutely right. The laws that they're creating are only going to affect us, the good guys, and the bad guys. Yeah, they steal the guns. They pay people to buy guns for them if they have a record. They could just make them from scratch. Heck, I mean, they find guns in prisons that are made from just odd objects. I mean, there's just absolutely no way that you're going to stop bad guys from getting their hands on guns. I mean, any more than, look, we had whatever you think about the war on drugs, we had it for a long time. And does anybody really want to say that it's been effective and that they stopped drugs from coming into the country? The whole idea of banning something, but what's particularly pernicious about this is they're trying to ban or severely restrict an item that is constitutionally protected. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. And that's because it is a God-given right that every man and woman has to be able to protect themselves, protect their family. And so that's why Gun Owners of America is fighting this so vigorously, why we're mobilizing people to put heat on their legislators, because we've got to get this stopped, because really it is being aimed at us. And, it's just a total lie or excuse when they claim this is about stopping crime.
Right. And we got to remind all the listeners, isn't anybody that gets elected have to swear to uphold the Constitution? Don't they have to swear to that?
Yes.
Most of them act like they have never even heard of such a document.
What about the governor in New Jersey that says it's above his pay grade? Mm-hmm. The Constitution's above his pay grade. So, I mean, come on.
He's a gem, right? He is just a gem. All right. So with over 8.5 million, it's got to be probably much closer to 9 million by now, brand new gun owners across this nation. That has just happened in the last 12 months. Why would now be the time for politicians to be taking such a hard stance against our rights to keep and bear arms? Doesn't that feel or sound a little bit tone deaf?
Oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. There is no popular push for gun control. It's interesting. Gallup, the organization Gallup, the polling organization, they every month ask Americans a question. What is the most important problem facing America? And in February, the desire for gun control, in other words, we need more gun control. That's the problem. The desire for gun control was not even in the top 20 answers. Less than 1% of Americans said that was the biggest thing. We need more gun control. You know what was at the top? I mean, COVID was at the top, okay? But right under COVID, number 2, you want to know what's there? Disgust with politicians, poor government leadership. I mean, people are sick of the politicians. By the way, disgust with the media was also much higher than gun control. So, I think what is happening here, gun control is just a total red herring. It's like Pelosi and company are saying, hey, don't look at us. Look at this shiny object over here. See, I mean, this is a distraction. The left hates the Constitution so much. They hate Really, they hate freedom so much. They're willing to sacrifice seats in Congress to get gun control passed. Yeah, it's interesting. In 1994, the Democrats, you'll remember, passed the Brady Law. which was the background checks. They passed a ban on commonly owned firearms, the semi-auto ban, and they got hammered in the 94 elections. They lost the control of Congress for like the first time in 40 years. And President Clinton said it, that, in fact, he said numerous times over the next few years, many times he said it was that gun control that cost him the control of the Congress. Well, it's interesting. That election had a chilling effect on the Democrats' ability to push gun control after that. So now what they're doing is they're pushing policies that they think has the support of a majority of Americans, and they have polling, that they say supports this. Of course, it's the same pollsters that were telling them that Americans favored the semi-auto ban and the Brady law, and those pollsters were wrong then. Just like how they're usually wrong about most elections. The pollsters are just always getting it wrong. But they claim that gun owners support universal background checks. I think Democrats are going to have a huge surprise for them. A national poll over 17,000 gun owners found that 92% of them would not vote to re-elect a legislator who supported universal background checks. So as Dirty Harry used to say, hey, do you feel lucky, Nancy?
That's great. Yeah, because it's only a year and some change before we get to vote again on some of these seats. And I do think that they're taking quite a risk with the direction that they're going. And it really is going to be it always is up to each and every individual citizen being involved, even, themselves reading the documents. This big, thick document that I'm holding here is all of like 50 pages long, and it is our recipe book for how to run a nation. There were people that fought, bled, starved, and died to have the opportunity to put quill to parchment to write our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And I don't think it's too much to ask for each of us to take the hour that it takes to read this and then be involved and speak to our legislators respectfully and help them, because they're called representatives, right? How can they represent us if we don't speak to them and tell them who we are and how to represent us? And how can we tell them to represent us based on this if we haven't familiarized ourselves with it? And you, Eric, clearly must understand this, because you have written a book called The Constitutional Recipe for Freedom, and you teach it to high school students. And I think that is amazing. And I want you to talk to us about your experiences doing that, because we can't protect an inheritance. This is our inheritance. We can't protect an inheritance that we don't even know anything about.
Yeah, I love teaching. I love teaching kids. I've been teaching high school students for 20 years in my off hours. And, I wanted to teach government. I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't find a book that I really liked. So I ended up writing my own, which is what you were referring to, The Constitutional Recipe for Freedom. But I wanted a book that was pro-Constitution. In fact, the book requires, and as part of the class that I teach, I require my students to read the entire Constitution and to summarize it. But I wanted a government book that was pro-Constitution, pro-freedom, pro-founding fathers. I wanted a book that treated rights as being God-given rather than being privileges handed out by the government. And everything we've been talking about so far, really, that's perhaps the biggest problem, is that in pushing gun control, like pushing HR 8 to require a background check before anybody can have permission to purchase a firearm, to exercise their rights. It's turning the whole notion of rights on their head. If our rights come from God, as the Declaration of Independence says, then that means that they are inalienable. They cannot be infringed. We don't have to get permission to exercise those rights. I mean, and think about other rights that we have: getting married, having children, speaking freely, traveling freely. You don't have to get permission from the government to do those things. And neither should it be one of our most basic rights, which is the right to protect ourselves. So anyway, that's, what I wanted to bring to students. And, the exciting thing is that truth is very powerful. I mean, it changes people. I've heard a lot of testimonials to that effect in with the students I've taught. I think one of the more dramatic stories, I remember, this was years ago, but there was a gal who, through the class, just kept, just challenging almost everything I said, like in every class. And that was actually fine. I mean, it was all respectful, and my response to her was respectful, and it provided actually for really good debate during the entire. And when I say debate, I mean in the very nicest way possible. But I think it really helped give students, both sides of an issue. Well, fast forward to later, I was on a mission trip with one of my teenagers. It was a mission trip to Honduras, and anyway, she was on that trip, and so I'm sitting in a row on the bus. We're going to a location. She's right behind me, and so she strikes up this conversation. She's like, I feel like I need to tell you about what was happening in the class, and I was like, you don't need to explain it. I thought the dialogue was great, and she said, no, here's what happened. She said, I come from a very liberal family, and you're teaching the Constitution and freedom, and everything you were teaching just really went against everything I'd grown up believing. So I had a lot of questions. And so that's why, I was hammering you with questions. She said, but halfway through the class, I caught the vision of, the Constitution and what it's saying. And she said, I saw the wisdom in it. And so now I was having these discussions with my mom. And so for the second half of the class, the questions I was giving you were actually questions that were coming from her. She said, I finally just told my Mom, you just have to read Mr. Pratt's book. And so she goes, guess what? My mom read your book, and now she's concerned. In fact, the thing she said was, now she's pro-gun. Now she's begging my dad to get a gun in the house. And I just laugh. That's great. And it's not that I'm seeking an agenda to make everybody think like me. I just want them to know our history. And I think for a lot of students, a lot of students tell me, I was already oriented this way, but now this gives me the reasons for it. And it's helped me to defend what I already believe. But anyway, it's exciting stuff. The truth sets people free, and it's exciting to see the blinders come off.
Erich, you need to teach, your teachings need to be franchised all over the country, because half the schools, they don't even teach the Constitution. I'm 65. I just got the tail end of it. We didn't really go into the Constitution that much. We had to do that on our own. So, doing what you're doing is great. If we could do that all across the country, then maybe people would wake up.
I'd love to, actually in the, through the class that I teach, I've actually taught kids all over the world. I mean, typically they're, American kids who are stationed, their parents are stationed in the State Department, or they're in the military. I've had kids who, when I'm teaching it, they're for them, it's, 10:30 at night. Kind of thing. I've had other kids who are getting up at 5 a.m. because they're on the West Coast when I'm on the East Coast. So it's been a fun experience, just having kids really globally all over the world.
Great.
That's incredible. I absolutely love it. And it has to be transformative. And then for you to share that story just solidifies in my mind what I think you cannot not have that experience if you're truly open to hearing and learning and considering other people's ideas. And I think that's just beautiful.
The question is, who doesn't want freedom?
And
who doesn't?
That's an excellent question. And how the people that hate our freedoms are able to market and package this permissive based system, which is what Erich was talking about, as somehow freedom, is really actually quite mind-boggling, and someone should do a study on that, right?
Hmm. Well, and you guys know there's one political party that is the greatest threat to freedom. But let's face it, both political parties have been a danger to our freedom at times, and we have fought Democrats and Republicans and fought to defeat them at the polls when when necessary. Because let's face it, there's been problems in both parties, but one especially that whatever freedom they don't want to they're not banning, they're then mandating. So they're either for bans, like firearms, or they're mandating that you act in a certain way or wear a certain thing. I mean, it's I think people have had enough of this, and already, I mean, one of the things I was gratified to see, I think it was yet another Gallup poll for the first time in history. They've what they've seen already in 2 months under this new administration is that Americans' view of American life has dipped to the lowest point in history, as long as they've been taking this poll. So things may be looking up for the next election, although, as you pointed out, we have to grin and bear it for the next year and a half or so. But I tell you what, we've got to be active. We can't just sit back and wait for the next election. We have to be very active in mobilizing and speaking out to remind them that we're watching what they're doing.
And Eric, that's probably one of the most disturbing thing about gun owners is that many of them aren't active. They kind of just wait and see what happens. Then when it's too late,
then they freak out.
Right.
But we have a party of control is what we have right now.
Yes.
It's all if they have control, they're happy.
Oh, it's true.
Right.
And I appreciate so much that you recognized, Eric, that this isn't just a left or Democrat issue. There are, I think, the huge push that we're seeing from the platform of the Democrats, may not be at my Democratic neighbor or the lady I know in the grocery store who ascribes to being a Democrat, but it's the party platform. There's such a push that it's actually giving an awful lot of cover to people who are wearing the big R, the big Republican, sign on their chest, that they are doing things that we would absolutely not agree with if we were tuned in to what's happening. And then we have an organization like yourself that you're nonpartisan, right? Why? Because the Second Amendment is nonpartisan.
Right.
Our Constitution is nonpartisan, and you're out there fighting for people who are shoulder to shoulder with you and people that are fighting against you, because this is the best recipe for the greatest experiment of all of mankind, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights for the United States. But what is the GOA, Gun Owners of America? What are you doing that differentiates you from maybe other Second Amendment advocate groups or activist groups that are out there?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, we represent more than 2 million gun owners. And in fighting gun control, we refuse to fight by supporting gun control light. And that's an approach, sadly, that sometimes we see others take as, this desire for compromise. I'll give you an example. In 2013, there was a couple of organizations that at the national level that were trying to fight Obama's gun control by supporting universal background checks, the so-called Manchin-Toomey bill. And we opposed that approach. And in the end, when we won, the New York Times credited GOA with killing Manchin-Toomey and Obama's gun control. And the way we did it was by mobilizing our grassroots members nationwide, putting the heat on Republican legislators, because they were the ones who were considering. So, I mean, we knew Democrats were going to support it. We had to keep the Republicans in line, and some of them were considering support for it. But our message was, we want no gun control, no compromises, no Manchin Toomey, no other, let's tweak this or that, none, zippo, nada. And guess what? That message won out. And so instead of compromising, Senator's spines stiffened after our grassroots members started hammering them politically, of course. And Democrats couldn't muster enough votes to overcome the filibuster. And so that's how we killed it. I mean, the problem is, if we were to compromise, then we're just giving away more and more freedom. And pretty soon we would have none left to give, because the anti-gunners, they're never going to stop. They support total gun bans. I mean, they have supported what DC used to have with its total gun ban. I mean, that's what they defended at the Supreme Court. I mean, so we know that this is where the left wants to go. They support the total gun ban approach. So if anybody thinks that appeasement or appeasing them is going to work, well, it's going to work about as well as Neville Chamberlain's peace for our time approach work. And how'd that turn out?
Right. It's like some of your members may be skeet shooters and only have shotguns. And when they see that a bill's coming up for an assault weapon ban, they go, well, I don't have any assault weapons. It doesn't bother me any. And they got to wake up and realize that everything they do is, every time we compromise, we're taking a deeper step into more compensation and all that. So
right.
It's
and I remember, I haven't been in the advocacy activism world for terribly long, maybe 5-6 years. It's interesting how many waves of this crazy roller coaster that I've experienced just in that time. We've been gun store owners for 16 years or so. And so we're entrepreneurs. We've always owned businesses. And when we opened the gun store, it was just another business. We were just selling a product like any other product we had ever sold in any of our others. And then suddenly we started realizing that that particular business had an anti-PR guy sitting in the highest office in the world, President Obama, constantly, throwing mud on us as gun store owners, as gun owners, as 2A advocates. And that's what got me involved. So I'm hoping that the side effect of all of this horrible wave of anti-rights stuff that's going on, the bills, the rhetoric, and everything else, will activate more people like myself and my husband, Dan, that we can no longer sit quiet. We cannot sit back and just, wait and expect that all this is going to just play itself out or somebody else will do it. But I remember the GOA taking heat for this no compromise hard stance. And I was so new at all of this. I was still in the early learning stages that I thought, why on earth would that be a bad stance to take? And, I remember hearing that, well, if we don't give a little bit, they're going to take all of it. And that was always the mindset. If we don't give a little, they're going to take all of it. And I think where we are now is, I don't know, maybe we're in a game of chicken, because it's like, really, Democrats, really? If you really are able to enact these things and take all of it, do you really not think that there isn't going to be a huge political backlash? And it's a high price to pay. It's a scary place to be. But I have to believe that our founders, they put everything on the line, right? Everything.
I hate to interrupt, but I need to tell you, one of the things that scare me about all this is they're trying to change the way we vote. And I'm afraid of that, because if they know that they can't win an election, so they adjust things so that they can win an election. Does that not have any concern for us?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a huge concern. And GOA is fighting HR1. We're excited to see the fact that there are states that are pushing back against what's happening. I think the fact that we have the filibuster, I mean, the House passed HR1, which is, changing voting as we know it. But it's not going to get through the Senate, at least the way it is now with the filibuster. And that's one of the things that Gun Owners of America has been, we've actually spent as much time in the first 2 months lobbying against gun control. And when I say lobbying, I mean mobilizing our members. We've also spent as much time lobbying on the filibuster and preserving the filibuster. And it's not, I'll admit, the greatest place to be in, where our keeping the filibuster right now comes down to keeping 2 or 3 Democrats. I mean, obviously the Republicans have a vested interest politically in keeping the filibuster. And by the way, I should probably explain, because there's always some viewers who will say, you know, what exactly is a filibuster? Long and short of it is, in the Senate, the filibuster, rather than just requiring a 50% plus 1 vote, it first requires 60 votes out of 100 to clear the hurdle to say, yes, we want to move forward and vote on this bill. And then you have the majority plus 1 vote after that. And so the filibuster, I mean, that 60 vote threshold is huge. That 60% threshold is huge. And with that, I mean, Democrats already are freaking out that the filibuster is going to cause, they're saying the filibuster is going to create a legislative graveyard for Biden. Well, you know, that happened too when the Republicans were in power. I mean, there were things that, you know, we wanted to get reciprocity passed. We got it passed in the House. We couldn't get it past the filibuster in the Senate. It doesn't mean, you know, you throw out the filibuster, because there's going to be times when your guys are in the minority and you definitely want that filibuster. So anyway, that's, you know, the good news is we still have that filibuster. We're still working hard to keep that. And right now, it looks like we have the votes locked in.
That's awesome. Is there any Democrats that are true rights people, like gun rights? And do we have any? I know there's some that like guns. There's a few, but are there any that are just like, I'm a constitutionalist Democrat? Is there?
No. I mean, you've got you've got a few that will talk about how they love their guns and things like that. But, you know, Manchin, who maybe is the most moderate of all the Democrats, I mean, he was the one who was one of the co-authors of the Manchin-Toomey bill 8 years ago to impose universal background, universal registration checks. So no, there's none righteous, no, not one, on at the national level in the Democrat Party in the Senate.
That is a shame.
And the GOA, you do work at the federal level with all of these HRs that you've been mentioning are federal bills, but you're also always active to at least encourage people to be involved in their state politics as well. Yes?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have several state directors around the country. And for states that we don't have a particular state director, we have a national state director that handles those other states. So yes, we've been very involved in 2 of the big, I should say 3 issues that we've been involved in. We've been working hard to pass constitutional carry. In fact, we were the first national pro-gun group at the federal level pushing that. We've been pushing the making states a sanctuary states where they're not going to help the feds enforce gun control. And the other thing we've been doing is fighting against red flag laws and keeping that from passing. There would be more states with red flag laws if we hadn't been mobilizing our members to oppose it. Because for a while, when red flags was kind of a new thing, there were a lot of Republicans around the country that thought, oh, this is kind of like a middle approach way, like a compromise way that both sides support. And so our members helped educate them on that no, this is an extreme violation of the Constitution, where you're taking people's guns before they've been convicted of a crime. I mean, where's the due process? That's horrid. And so anyway, so I think we've put a tourniquet on that and stopped the flood of states that initially were moving towards that.
Well, I read a meme a couple of days ago, and I don't know if I got it right, but I'm going to try it because it's important. They said that, you know, so like we have a governor, right? If you have a governor that's, you know, really strong on guns and everything else, and you pass a law, you say, well, we have this governor, so everything can be fine. But you have to think about who's going to be in place next time. Who's our next official? Because then they start abusing. So we need to completely remove the law.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So speaking of states, you and I are going to be visiting the same state very soon to take part in an awesome speaker event. It's an event in Florida on Saturday, March 20th, called Freedom Not Fear, put on by Florida Carry. And I love when I see one 2A organization supporting another 2A organization, because we got an awful lot of sibling rivalry sometimes that takes place among our different groups. And for you to step up and come out and be a speaker at that just really spoke highly of you to me. And can you just talk to us a little bit about that event and what you plan to share there?
Absolutely. So it's an open carry event. Right now, over 40 states do allow open carry. Florida does not, with the exception of if you're camping or fishing. So this is a camping event where people will be able to open carry. And so it's something that Florida Carry has been sponsoring annually. It's actually my first time going there, so I probably can't speak a lot to it from experience as to what it's going to be like, but I will be speaking there, as you were saying, and I'll be giving a federal report on what's happening here in DC. It'll be a lot of the stuff that we've already covered. But I think, one of the big things that I just want to impart to people is just to encourage them that this is a battle that we can win. We were just talking about the filibuster in the Senate. Right now, Democrats do not have the 60 votes needed to pass gun control. So even though we'll be seeing the House passing gun control, it's going to come to a stop in the Senate. And so that's why, again, a lot of the work that we've been doing is working to save the filibuster. We're putting a lot of emphasis on, we're talking about Manchin, Sinema in Arizona, and Tester in Montana, because all three of them have made statements that they're very wary of tampering with the filibuster. So we're trying to because we know that they're going to come under heat from Schumer, from the media, from their Democrat Party. So we're trying to counterbalance that by getting their members to say, hey, what you said, we support you 100% in that. Do not cave, do not compromise, or we'll be really upset with you. And by the way, don't forget that at some point, Democrats are going to be in the minority again, and they will want the filibuster. So anyway, this is how, saving the filibuster is one of the key things to saving our Second Amendment rights right now.
Well, we can pound the Democrats down so far that they won't have enough votes even then. They're going to lose they should lose a lot of representatives with the next election. And if they get enough, then
hope. But if people are tuned out, if they're
Yep.
not paying attention and all they do is say, well, I am a fill in the blank, Democrat or Republican, so I'm just going to tick it on down the list, then that is not necessarily going to protect and preserve our Constitution. Or if they just go by name recognition, well, I don't really know any of these people, but I've heard this name most often, so I'm just going to vote for that person. It's like that is not a representative, a way to elect a representative government. And we just really need to help people better understand and messaging and going to these speaker events where we're on the ground talking to real live human beings, which has been so interrupted this past year because of the COVID stuff. This is so important. And, speaking to your spheres of influence, people that, taking that chance to share your ideas with people who may or may not agree with you, just like, Erich's example of, teaching a high school class and, not just taking the safe route and saying, oh, yes, young lady, I totally respect your, what is it called? Your truth. It's like, you can say that in certain ways, but then you don't stop there. You continue to say, and then here's my truth, right? So, and it's backed up by, a couple hundred years of something called the Constitution. So I really admire and applaud the work that you're doing on all levels.
But Eric, you know, too, if you want to talk to somebody that's on the other side, they're pounded so hard on the other side, they don't even know how to debate it. All they know how to do is get angry when you don't agree with them. And so when you have students that will come up to you and talk to you, that's a gift.
It really
You know?
is, yes.
Because there might be some things that you're locked on that maybe you're not right on. And so we need to see both sides. And the problem is you can't talk to them. They won't let you talk to them.
Yeah. No, it's been a wonderful opportunity having that to talk to students, and you know, and I think in a lot of cases, you know, there's still it's one reason why I like high school students, because they're still formulating their thinking. But I love what you were saying about, you know, speaking to your sphere of influence. You know, I'm a father who has 10 kids. They're all extremely pro-gun. You know, I haven't let the culture affect their view, because and so we talk about these things. We talk about them around the dinner table, the breakfast table, and not just guns. I mean, you know, issues, freedom issues. You know, I take them all to the range. We've brought friends to the range who were initially very anti-gun, but were curious and left that range I shouldn't say completely pro-gun, but pro-gun. In other words, with a much different perspective than they had when they went in. So, you know, these are things that you can't necessarily, you know, you may not be able to reach them through your show. The New York Times may not be able to reach them, but it's that one-on-one, you know, speaking to the people, like you said, who are in our sphere. That makes a huge difference, and we should not neglect that.
And that's what your 2 million members need to realize, is that influence by just taking them out, taking someone out that hasn't shot before, is probably the golden ticket.
I think so. And, you know, we've said a lot over this past year that, you know, being a member of an organization like the GOA is important, but it's part of doing your part, right? So you still have to do the individual advocacy and the individual work, you know, going to the ballot box, educated on what you're doing, and then also being part of a member organization kind of is that is, you know, we can't use the word force multiplier anymore, because somehow, you know, that gets you on a list that you're inciting violence. But for you know, for the context of this conversation, that's really what it is it's helping people see that there are other people in this conversation with you, and helps to keep us from being so duped. It's so easy to get duped by what passes as news these days. And when you've got an organization that gives you the straight scoop, this is really what's going on, this is really what's in the bill, and this is really how it's going to impact not only your life, but your children's and your children's. And the GOA does that. And I so appreciate the work that you all do there.
Well, thank you both. Thank you.
Absolutely. So as we start wrapping up, please tell folks how they can get involved in that way, and how they can follow the GOA and join. I encourage everybody to join an organization like this, the No Compromise, really going to the mats on our rights organization like Gun Owners of America.
Well, probably the easiest way, go on the web at gunowners.org. And I would just encourage people, sign up for our free email alerts, because that is how we are defeating gun control. We're mobilizing people to the polls. We're mobilizing people to oppose gun control. The more people that we represent, the louder voice that we have in the Congress. And, you know, and that's what needs to be done. And it really helps when there is an organized effort, and that's what we're doing in organizing. And, you know, as opposed to just, you know, somebody watching the news and just sending a random message to their legislators. We've already, since last week, generated over 1 million messages to Republicans in the Congress, telling them, don't try to nickel and dime these bills and water them down. We want no gun control. We want you just to vote no. And that sends a loud message. People can follow me personally on Twitter. I'm also on Parler. You can find me there. But I want to just thank both of you for doing what you're doing and helping educate people. That does a tremendous service too. Just bringing freedom principles and helping alert people to what's going on in our country and the threats we're facing. So you're informing people while also revealing the dangers that are out there and how they can get active. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank
How do
you.
they find your book, The Constitutional Recipe for Freedom?
Well, it's out of print right now. However, I'm going to be doing another class coming up this fall. So people could just go to our website at gunowners.org and just use the contact form there to ask about it. And I can, because I'm going to be putting in another order. And so now's actually a good time. So I can get that done. So just go gunowners.org and use the contact form.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Erich Pratt, the Senior Vice President for Gun Owners of America. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. God bless.
You know, I want to talk about loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, Eric, it's awesome. You know, for an organization that they kind of work like the Arizona Civil Defense League. Is that right? AZCDL?
AZCDL.
But they work on a federal level.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's not a lot of organizations, big organizations that do that are working to fight the laws. So I really appreciate that. But I want to get back to the loophole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know who the biggest loophole is
Mm-hmm.
the government itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because all they have to do is say, our machines are down, and it prevents you from buying a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
All they have to do is say, you're delayed because we don't have time to mess with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
They inconvenience you, they trouble you, they keep you. Maybe you'll change your mind and not go back and pick the gun up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
So when you say their machines are down, for people that maybe aren't familiar with the process, what do you mean by their
well,
machines?
that's the thing. That's one of the worst things about this whole plan that they have is that a person comes in to buy a gun on Monday and, we're down right now. Our system is down and we can't check a background check. Well, in my opinion, the law should be that if there was a law, there wouldn't be a law, but that
there ought
you
to be
would
a law that there are no laws
right,
against our gun rights.
but that you would, if the system's down, you can't do anything. If the system says you're delayed, you have the 5-day waiting period or 3 days, whatever. I can't remember anymore, but
It's three,
it's
and they're
3.
trying to extend it.
That then you can pick up the gun. But when it's down, you can't do nothing. So basically, they could take the busiest day of the year for gun purchase, let's say Black Friday,
Mm-hmm.
and just say our system's down, and there is nothing we can do.
Right.
We're stuck.
Now, and you'll have to help me remember if this is an Arizona thing or
It's
if
federal.
the federal.
It's federal.
No, I'm saying when you have a concealed carry license,
Mm-hmm.
that's the
yeah.
only
If you
can sell to during an outage.
right, if you have a concealed carry, which I encourage everyone to go through the class and get, then you can buy a gun over the counter. You show the concealed carry permit. You're already cleared for background, and you can walk out with the gun.
You
So
still fill out the form.
right,
It just doesn't have to be called in because it's sort of like a pre-check at the airlines, right?
right. So that part is good, but
Mm-hmm.
there's times that we've delayed 20, 30 people in one day.
Yeah.
Denied. We couldn't sell them a gun because they were their
Because the
system was
system
down.
was down. Yeah. It is gun control by the flick of a switch, really.
Right.
And how we never know if there's going to be an outage of the background check
Yeah.
system, computer system. We never know once it happens how long it's going to be.
And we've had them full days.
And we've had full days
Right.
where we're basically out of business as a gun store, except for the few people who maybe had a concealed carry license, which in Arizona, we have constitutional carry. You're not required to get a concealed carry permit, but we encourage everyone to do that because it's good training. And, if there is an outage,
So I guess
not prevented from being able to do commerce with a legal and licensed gun store. But honestly, there's a phrase out there that a right delayed is a right
denied.
denied.
Right. So I would say, so if they really want to do something, they should make that law that if they're going to make a law
Mhm.
that says if the system is down, you can proceed with the sale. That system would never go down then. They'd have a back of a back of a backup, right?
You know what? I
Right.
hadn't thought
But
about
really,
that, but I
the,
think
they
I
said
think you're
that,
onto something
well,
there.
they said that law was not, when they introduced that bill, they
Mhm.
said that was not to hurt any honest gun owners. That wouldn't affect them in any way, that it only affect the criminals because criminal couldn't buy a gun. But yet honest law-abiding citizens came in and were denied or delayed.
Right. And now they want universal, always in air quotes, universal background checks. Because universal would imply or would mean that every single person is going through a background check. But you know what? The local guy that, is out there trying to plan to do harm and mayhem to others who has no respect for human life, is he going to go through a
No,
background?
no, he's
Yeah,
not.
probably not.
And I do want,
So it's only going to affect law-abiding citizens, and it can affect them in such a way that there could be an outage of the background check computer system for,
a month,
yeah, I
whatever they
mean,
want it to be. What do you have to fight it?
yeah, it'll probably just be 2 weeks to slow the spread of gun ownership, and
Right.
then it'll end up being
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
yeah, right.
Well, there's, I know we're running out of time, but I want to talk about one other thing that he addressed, the gun registration. People say, well, why not? Why not register? What's wrong with registering guns? Well, tell that to what happened in 1934 in Germany,
Mhm.
but also tell that to people modern times in California, that they told them that, oh, we just want to know who has 50 caliber rifles. So please register your rifles. You have 90 days or whatever it was. I don't know how many days to register your 50 caliber.
Mhm.
Well, then after they did the registration, they waited about a year and they said anybody that has a 50 caliber gun needs to remove it from the state or it would be confiscated.
Mhm.
So now they knew who had 50 calibers
Mhm.
and they knew how to remove them from the state.
From the
So,
people, yeah.
so these are things that
It's
tell me,
never for your
right?
own good.
So
Trust us on
give
this.
me a reasons why we need to register firearms.
Yeah.
What, who needs to know how many guns I have or if I have a gun? What person?
The answer is no one.
No one, right?
Well,
So,
maybe me, your
so
wife.
give me
Maybe I should
what by registering my gun, what advantage, how does that help anyone? It only helps for one thing.
confiscation.
If they want to confiscate your guns, or if they
Absolutely.
want to know, hey, we're looking at Dan Todd right now. Oh, he has guns. All right, now we know he has guns. So there's no benefit at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're running out of time.
We are, but what an amazing conversation. I loved talking today with Erich Pratt, and I appreciate his time so much. And I thank you, all of our listeners all over the globe. I mean, literally, when we look at our stats and see who's listening and where they're listening, the map lights up all over the entire world. And you all could be anywhere. You could be doing anything. And the fact that you've spent your time with us that's your most finite resource. And we value that so much. Thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank
that.
you.
If you want to watch any of our shows that you've missed, you can go to the OpsLens smartphone app. You can go to YouTube until they decide to boot us out of there, because we talked about guns.
We also talked about voting.
And voting. Oh my goodness. Oh my. And you can also watch us on GunStreamer, which is a great YouTube style platform for videos. And for the audio only version, super simple. Just go to gunfreedomradio.com, click the on demand tab, and
Binge listens to your heart's content, darling.
I never say darling. I
You
never
just
say
said
that.
it.
I never say that. Anyway, and then if you want to see photos and bios and information about any and all of the guests we've ever had on. These are subject matter experts who are bringing you the straight scoop. Click the guest tab, and we don't hate it when you spend time there. All right, we have got to run. Until next time, what are we going to do?
Pray
Anyone?
for our nation.
Yes. What else are we going to do?
Pray for our representatives.
What else are we going to? How about the ones we don't like?
Yeah. I
Even
said
those?
representatives that we don't like, we're going to pray for them.
Okay. Maybe especially for
Yeah,
the ones
especially
we don't
them. Yeah. Well, you double,
like?
yeah.
All right. Have a great week. Be good to each other. And God bless.
Bye-bye.